Good evening, everyone. Welcome to More Than Our Sickle Cell. This is such an exciting time. More Than Our Sickle Cell is an opportunity for us to bring the global community together to talk about our shared health and experiences. I am so thrilled to be here tonight. I also have my co-host, Biba Tinga, whom you will hear from in a short while. She is the Executive Director of Sickle Cell Disease Association of Canada. I am Ray Blaylark, the Executive Director at Sickle Cell Foundation of Minnesota. And oh boy, do we have a show for you tonight. We are talking, it's June, so no matter when you are watching the replay, it's June right now, and it is Men's Health Month, but it's also LGBTQ month. So we've got two incredible warriors who are going to share in this conversation with us. But before we begin, I want you to hear from my co-host, Miss Biba Tinga. Come on in and tell us all about who you are.
Thank you, dear friend. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on the time while you're watching this. So I'm joining you today from the French-speaking side of Canada. You can tell from my accent. I'm very, very, very happy and proud to be here today to have this amazing guest that you're going to hear from tonight. We're going to have a very good conversation, I'm sure. I'm very excited. You know, I just admire and love those two gentlemen, and we're going to hear from them very soon. I'm a warrior mom. And I think Andre is about the age of my son, who is a warrior too. So I am very excited today that we're going to have a conversation about men's health. What is it to be, a man, to live with a rare condition, to live with a very debilitating and painful disease in this world where men are always, expected to behave a certain way. And what if you don't fit also? You don't fit in what society wants you to be, and society wants you to just behave like. How does it look like? So we're going to have a nice conversation. And I really want to welcome you and to thank you for coming tonight. And here we go.
Fantastic. All right. So I'm going to introduce both of them, and I'll let them then introduce themselves after that. But our very first special guest is Mr. Andre Marcel Harris, who hails out of North Carolina, but he is in Texas. That's his new home. Been there for a minute now. And Mr. Tristan Lee. Tristan, what state are you in?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
That's right. Okay. So you up here in the north with me. So, and Biba as well. All right. So I want, Andre, would you start and tell people who you are, how you fit into the sickle cell community? Also, how do you fit into the LGBTQ community? And then Tristan will follow up with that. And then we're going to start this conversation, y'all.
Yeah, so glad to be here again with all three of these esteemed panelists I've known for a while. So it's great to see all of you all, albeit virtually. But I am Andre Marcel Harris. I'm currently a 34-year-old sickle cell patient, or someone living with sickle cell. And I just completed my second year of my PhD in social work here at the University of Houston. That's what brought me to Houston, Texas. I have SS, and I would think of myself as a sickle cell disease advocate. And I also fit into the LGBTQ community because I identify as bisexual. And I would also consider myself someone who is a burgeoning LGBTQ advocate, and I'm sure we'll get more into that later on in this session.
Awesome. Tristan, and you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to this. Ray, Biba, I cannot thank you enough. I was like so excited. I was like, me? You guys want to hear from me? Awesome. So I thank you so much. Andre, it's always good to see you and, be in your presence. So my name is Tristan. Everyone calls me Devo. I am a 39-year-old sickle cell SS warrior and advocate. Actually, next Thursday, June 15th, I will be turning 40. So that's a huge accomplishment. And I'm so ready because, when I was first diagnosed with sickle cell, doctors told my mom that I would not live past 20, but we all know that God has the final say so. So like I said, next Thursday, I will be celebrating my 40th birthday. So a little bit about me is I am, first of all, a professional model. I'm an actor. I am a professional sickle cell advocate. I am also an author. I also am a fashion designer. I have a fashion line that I created for sickle cell awareness. And I host some stuff sometimes, like around my local area, and sometimes on TV. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And the way I fit into the LGBTQ community is I am an androgynous gay man. I love who I am, you know what I mean? I am very out and proud, and that's just, I wear it every day, and that's just how I present, and there's no going back. So what you see is what you get.
I love that. I am so excited. Like I just the fact that we are all in the same virtual room to talk about something that, a lot of people sit on the sidelines and just watch. They comment to themselves or they comment in their little small group, but we want to have a public conversation. And we know that this is a very broad topic. So there's really no way to exhaust this topic at all. In fact, we might need to do a part 2 or something because there's so much to talk about. But I want to, and Biba, you know how we do this. Come on in whenever, just cut me off. It's okay. Yeah. But I want to talk about the fact that, both of you have this intersectionality about yourself. When I think about intersectionality, I think about a society that would rather put us all into a box. And define us in one way. And none of us can be defined that way. And we all have something unique about us that we identify as a strong piece of who we are that we just aren't willing to leave behind. I am a woman, I am Black, I am Christian, I am all of these things. And I don't want to just be one and not the others. Andre, you made a comment. You said that you are a burgeoning advocate, that you have really begun to find your place in the LGBTQ community and use your voice on behalf of the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, Ray knows because I can't remember when I met you, but it's been quite a while. And when Ray met me, I may start laughing, and it's because I'm just laughing at years ago, I would have never thought I'd be in this position. So I was raised in the church, like holiness, Holy Ghost filled, speaking in tongues, that kind of church. And I also, at a very young age, everybody knew I was going to be a pastor, a preacher, and I fulfilled most of that. Like I was a licensed minister, I preached, I was in the choir, I did a lot in my local church and in my national denominational organizations. But from a very young age, I knew that I didn't know how to term it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I didn't want to compartmentalize who I liked into one gender. I don't want to it never made sense to me why I could only like one, right? But that being said, because I was raised in such Christianity is very broad, and it's very, there's a lot of different aberrations of Christianity. However, for the most part, most people who are Christians lean towards a conservative viewpoint, right? And because of how people have interpreted the Bible, they believe that homosexuality or LGBTQ, any type of deviating, and I've used quotes, identity is demonic, will send you straight to hell. It's something that you need to be free from. So say all that to say, try to wrap this up, is I was on an odyssey of, I'm trying to be free. I want to be, as we say, delivered. I want to be someone who nice who I know I am to fit a mold that other people are prescribing for me. So anyway, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I'll say that to say that is where I am. And so I literally, as of 2020, which was just 3 years ago, came out publicly as bisexual and have been unapologetic about the fact that LGBTQ rights are human rights and everyone should be treated the same. I believe I mentioned in my introduction that I'm also, I'm a social worker. I have all of my degrees, my bachelor's, my master's, and I'm earning my PhD. And I also have an associate's degree in pre-social work. Like all of my educational training is in social work. And at the core of what we believe is that everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. And if I believe that as a trained social worker, I am mandated to advocate for not only people who are LGBTQ because I identify that way, but because I believe that all humans should be treated with dignity and self-respect.
That was the whole sermon, huh?
It is one. Well said.
I hope, Tara, you better not be driving and snapping your fingers at the same time. I can see you.
So let's hear from you, Tristan, now.
Okay. So like Andre, I was raised in the church. I grew up, Southern Baptist. My grandmother on my dad's side, like she had us in church, Sunday morning service, Sunday evening service, Tuesday night, Bible study Wednesdays, Friday night, you know what I mean? Like we did it all. So I was like constantly in the church. And then on Saturdays, my mom's mom, my nan mom would take me to the church with her and we would clean the church on Saturdays. So the church has always been, a huge part of my life. I'm very Christian. And just being that, I still hang on to my Christianity so hard while I remain to be a strong, Black gay man. And I just think that it's so important for us, especially, in the LGBTQ community, to stand our ground and let people know, like, we're not just one thing. We can be so many different things. And I think the beauty of it is that, you know what I mean? Like, no matter when somebody comes into their, I don't like to say out, but I say awakening. So whenever that awakening happens for the person, it's just a beautiful thing. And the thing about the LGBTQ community that I find is that we are very welcoming. I mean, we can be judgmental sometimes, some of us, but the main thing is that we are very welcoming. We just love to party, you know what I mean? Like everything we like to make bright, beautiful, and we just like to have fun, you know what I mean? So no matter who you are or, however, what time you or what age you come around to, your awakening, just know that we'll accept you. We're here for you. We love you. We support you. And that's just what it's going to be. As far as like my sickle cell journey and getting into my advocacy, it was a mix of different factors because I kind of fell into this when I was like 16 because they found me, the Red Cross found me, and they did like this huge write-up about me, the blood drive around here and whatever. And so then from that, I got into Harrisburg. The Harrisburg Sickle Cell Council found me and they're like, hey, you need to join us because you look like, you have something to say. And I was like, I never did this before, but all right, I got a big mouth, so I'll come. So I joined them and that just opened a huge door for me for advocacy. And now I am a huge LGBTQ SCD advocate and there's no going back. Like I said, I'm just here. I want everybody to know that we are here. We're not going to go away. And I think the LGBTQ SCD community and the SCD community in large just need the bridge. And, we just all need to come together and do what we do.
You know, you said something, and I mean, you said a mouthful there because you really touched on a lot of things, and you, it's a nice transition, because what I want to ask is, you know, both of you all have come to terms with who you are, and you've accepted that unapologetically, and regardless of what anybody else says or thinks. But do you think that also having sickle cell disease impacted that identity discovery? How did that play a role in identifying who you were and really coming to terms with that? Andre, I see you shaking your head.
So I would have to say, this is very nuanced and complicated, but if I could say this succinctly, there have been times of 34, right? This is a genetic disease, so I was born with this. So all 34 of my years, I've lived with this disease. And honestly, all 34 years, from my remembrance, I can remember that I was different, right? I think, and I'm coming from my social work lens, the way we are socialized and the way society is framed, we're told how to identify. We're not, people always say, be you, be who you are, but that's such a lie, because it's be you unless you're queer, unless you're fat, unless you this, unless you're that. If you're other, they really don't want you to be you. It's with conditions and terms. And like, there have been pivotal moments in my life that, and I love how Tristan termed it, that have been awakenings for me. I'm like, hold up one second. And not to make this political, but one of the greatest awakenings that I've ever had, if we know about like religious history in the United States and even in Europe, like the Great Awakenings, like I call it the Great Awakening. But like, my Great Awakening was when Donald Trump said he was running for president. I was like, y'all tripping. Like, and again, this is not trying to turn anything into political. But since then, I noticed, because like I said, I was raised in church, how a lot of people who I loved and respected, they weren't acting how I thought they would act. You know, they weren't saying the things that I would have expected them to say. Even like when we get into the pandemic era, and then, you know, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and all of these things are happening in the thick of COVID in 2020. And I see how some people react to that. I'm like, this is not right. And those are like the times in my life, not only with sickle cell, but with my sexual identity, where I'm like, this is an awakening for me to be unapologetic, as you mentioned, and to actually really speak out, and not just for me, but for the entire community. And I wanted to bring this up before I let this part go, is that I think, again, because of the way our society is, this, and, you know, Biba, of course, you're from Canada, but I'm sure, you know, Western culture is not much different in Canada than it is in the United States. But, you know, the Western world holds patriarchal Christian, you know, Judeo-Christian views so dear to them. And you hear politicians always talk about conservative values and Christian values, right? As if that is part of the fabric of our country, when in actuality, it really isn't. It denies people who are not Christian, which there are millions of people in this country, in this hemisphere, who do not identify as Christians, who are left out of the conversation. So I say that to say, in our text read this, another sickle cell organization did a Pride Month post, and lo and behold, someone said, what does sickle cell disease have to do with pride? And it's like, you see, I'm like, you see the befuddlement on my face, because like, to saying that suggests that all people with sickle cell are all monolithically the same, exactly, which is to me willfully ignorant. We know that sickle cell is a diverse disease that, not just Black people have, right? I just read a study that says 2% of people in the United States have sickle cell. So with our current numbers, we have 2,000 people in this country have sickle cell. There's diversity within, the racial makeup of the disease. So why wouldn't there be diversity in the sexual orientation or what other, like you said, intersectional identities? And the last thing I'll say, and I'll pass it on to Christian, is Tristan, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Christians and I'm saying Christian. The last thing I'll say is, I think there has to be a huge conversation, not only in the sickle cell space, but in other spaces, especially that are frequented by predominantly Black people, because that's a whole nother conversation about how we buy into some anti-Black ideologies. But so many people view LGBTQ plus as not only deviant, but they view it as a threat or a harm. And they always use their children as a justification for their bigotry. There is, to equate LGBTQ people with deviant sexual activity denies people from being a total human being. You are sexualizing, just because I say that I'm bisexual doesn't mean that you get to apply a sexual lens to me and sexualize me. Mm-hmm. That is just my sexual identity. That doesn't mean because I'm bisexual, I'm going to do something to your child or do something you see what I'm saying? And I think that is the issue. The fact, because all of it's only June 8th.
That's what this.
The fear mongering is June 8th, and I have seen hundreds of posts on social media from people, like I said, I thought I respected, talking about how the LGBTQ people are going to do something to your kids. They're going to harm your children, when in actuality, all the straight people are the ones that are doing something to your kids. But I'm not going to go there. I'm going to be quiet and let Tristan talk.
Well, Tristan, wait. Before you talk, I would like to just say something. Andre, you've said it, but I want to tell you something. I am an African. I am Black. I'm a woman. I'm African, and I'm a Muslim woman. But here I am sitting with you here. So it tells you that the same way we have this ignorance in this community, we also have, love, understanding, and open-mindedness in this community. So I think we have to acknowledge that. We are getting somewhere. We're getting there.
Absolutely.
But as long as you keep doing what you are doing, we are gonna, make sure that we educate our community. Tristan, before I let you speak, I would like for us to touch on two important things during this conversation. I want to talk about discrimination. Discrimination has a Black man living with a condition that is debilitating. That takes you, to go and seek care. And also now, if in the community, within the community, the type of discrimination that you face because you are openly, identifying as bisexual or gay. And the other thing I would like also us to talk about is mental health. How do you cope with all that? Because I'm sure it's not easy. So Tristan, I will let you talk, and then if Andre wants in, then.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you for that. And Andre, no problem. Call me Christian. My grandmother, my Grammy Vera, my dad's mom, still cannot say Tristan. So she constantly calls me Christian to this day. So I constantly get that anyway. So Ray, to answer your question, for me, like, the sickle cell identity really helped me show up into my LGBTQ side and embrace it even more at a younger age, because after I had my stroke, like, I realized that everything had changed in my life, right? So I, was suddenly thrust into this life, still being me, but perceived on the outside as completely changed and different. So I was talking to my husband a couple of years ago, and I was telling him, it's crazy that in this world and the way I present and show up, I have nowhere to hide. I've never had anywhere to hide. You see me coming, you see me going, you see me, in my full truth, I show up like this, I walk like I walk. You guys have all seen me. You see how it is, So I have nowhere to hide.
You are you.
Thank you. That right there just made me more prepared for when my awakening did happen at 18. And so at 18, you know, after I really started advocating all that stuff with everybody, I was like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? Finally, I found my community, my people, and it's just so bomb to be here. And then like something happened and it was just like, I got taken back because I didn't really get to vibe and meet the community as a whole until I joined up with the SCDA and I met all you guys in like Atlanta and like, you know, Baltimore, right? And so the first time I'll never forget, we did the Lonzel Lee panel. That was my first time. Yep. And I was like, oh my God, this was amazing. This was a beautiful experience, blah, 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 blah. And I was so excited. 2 weeks later, somebody came in my DM, I'm not gonna say who, somebody I respected and loved showed up in my DMs and was like, Tristan, you are amazing. We love you, we support you, and we are here for you as far as like the sickle cell goes. But we cannot really support your lifestyle. And I was just like, what?
Like what? Like in all caps, what?
Yeah, I was just like, wow. And this was like somebody that we all know, that we all respect, and like I look to as like a aunt figure. Yeah. So it was just like, I was really taken back by that. And I was just like, damn, I thought I found my people and I could be like who, you know, I am.
A lot of double standards in this community, right? We don't want people judging us, you know, being part of the sickle cell community and having sickle cell, and yet we will turn around and judge other situations and other people. And we can't let that continue. We can't be asking for this dignity and respect for a condition that we're diagnosed with, while we are disrespected for our identity and who we are, even outside of sickle cell disease. You know, we fight for that in so many ways just already as Black people. I'm challenged when I hear things like, you know, the comment that was made on a post, like the DMs in your box. We know, everybody has different thoughts, feelings, perspectives, beliefs, and that's perfectly fine, but you don't have to judge someone else. You do not have to minimize their existence in order to hold tight to your beliefs. Biba, you are coming from sub-Saharan Africa. There's a lot going on in Africa right now around the LGBTQ community, not to mention sickle cell disease, right? So this stigma, it's a double stigma. I don't know which one is worse. Is there one that's worse? Talk about it.
You know what? I will tell you frankly, I think having sickle cell is worse at this time. And I will tell you why. Because you don't have even access to care, you might die. But you might also die if you decide to live your life, your true as who you are, because they might come after you. So, but I would say that, you know, it's just bad in both. You know what is funny? When I was growing up, you know, in Africa sometimes, well, you know what? I realized that there were people who were, you know, gays, identifying as gays, you know, around us. I grew up with them a long time ago because I'm over 50 years old. But society is like, you know, organized like in group. As long as you stay within the group that they assign you in, and you're fine. You don't bother them, right? But if you try to say, no, I am who I am, this is how I'm going to live, that's when people are going to have a problem with you. So things are changing now, right? Mentalities are changing. Everything is changing. And we are realizing that you cannot decide for someone how they're going to live because of your personal beliefs, might it be your culture, your values, or your religions, right? So this is why I think everywhere in the world, not even only in Africa, things are changing, and we have to keep just standing and doing what we're doing, either for sickle cell, you know, and also for the LGBTQ community. We just have to continue to push the barriers as we do every day. And I'm so grateful that the two of you are speaking, because I think you are the only two that I hear speaking loudly in this community. Others are still in hiding. So let them come out. let's see if after this one they will come out.
And I know, and I believe that there are many more who even want to speak openly. I think it's about creating the platform. This is why I love what I do, in the sense that Zoom is now available and all of these different platforms that we can open these dialogues. And y'all know me, I like talking about the stuff don't nobody else want to talk about. I like talking about the controversial things, you know, because that's who I was growing up. I was that little girl raised in church who didn't have no filter, and I'm going to say it, and I'll get in trouble later, but I'm going to say it. I already know what I'm going to deal with. And so it's always been important to me that our voices are not stifled, whatever your voice is, and being able to live your truth. To live your truth. I mean, I was a preacher's kid, so I was always under the microscope. Everyone wanted to decide for me how I should live, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, who I should hang around, what I should eat. Like I found out from a very early age, I'm going to be a very unhappy person if I have to live according to everybody else around me. And guess what? I'm going to make some of them mistakes. I'm going to be exactly what you called me probably at some point in my life. So
Ray,
go ahead.
I wanted to, Tristan said something before I forget, because, you know, we get that sickle brain. I don't know if y'all see me sitting here taking notes, because I think this is important to the conversation too. And Tristan mentioned, you know, we were bouncing between sickle cell and LGBTQ and the intersections between them both. But here's a great intersection between them both. Like Tristan, I also suffered a stroke. I hadn't even turned 2 yet. I was, almost 2, had a stroke, learned how to walk again. Of course, you all, you don't see me in any, assisted, devices. I can talk, like Ray said, I talk. And so, but growing up, I used to have to go to speech therapy. I was told I had, hearing loss due to the stroke. I mean, people don't understand that a stroke, just like sickle cell, can affect everywhere. So I can't wiggle my right toes on my foot. So I have a slight limp on my right foot. If you really pay attention, I drag my feet. My right leg is smaller than my left leg. All of these small, minute things, right? But I was teased when I was younger because, well, you talk like a girl. And, I've always been called different slurs that are attributed to people in the LGBTQ community because I talked like a girl, but they didn't understand that I had a lisp because I had a stroke. Oh, you walk like a girl. Well, they don't understand that I walk the way I do. I wore a brace until I was 18. So, there were some children, they don't sometimes really think about those things. And then oh, well, you look like a girl. And I'm like, well, if you understand the disease, we all look like, first of all, we're 14.
Right.
And a lot of us don't mature, I'll use that word, like of our counterparts do. So
yeah, there's delayed growth.
I'm grateful for the facial hair that I got. It is a small little bit.
I remember when you was growing it, you was like, I'm gonna get this, this facial hair.
So all of that to be said, so to me, that's really where the intersectionality comes in for me, is because all the time because Biba said it earlier about masculinity, and we've done this before in Black men or men living well with sickle cell town halls, that we talk about how a lot of men who are cis heterosexual men who are married with children feel guilty that they have a disease because they can't be the man and provide, and all of these expectations that our society places on people because of their sex assigned at birth, irregardless of your disability status. So even if you have sickle cell or whatever chronic disease, you're still expected to be the man and be tough and provide and be the protector. And we don't have conversations about men needing to be protected.
Yo, I just wrote a piece for Fulcrum, and I think they posted it today, about men and how we have support groups for men with sickle cell. And I said all of that, like if you go to the Fulcrum post and of today, like that's what I was talking about. But it's so crazy that like, I've never noticed that about you, Andre. Like I didn't know that you had a stroke. Everything that you said, I've been through. You know, I walk like I walk and all that stuff. I went to physical therapy for like a good portion of my life, physical and speech therapy, all that, you know what I mean? But unfortunately with me is I let my situation and what I was dealing with beat me down. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be a normal kid. I just wanted to play and jump and skip and run and all that with like the other kids. So I got to a point where at 11, I just gave up. And my mom was like, you don't want to do physical therapy anymore? I was like, no, I hate this. Like, I just want to stop. And she was like, but Tristan, but that was me being young and not understanding, like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I have my leg brace and all that stuff, you know, at that age and whatever, but I still needed that therapy and to go through the process to come out on the other side. Thank God, you know, I am like 80%, you know what I mean, better than I was, but still I could have been so much further. So with you, I will say that it's a testament, you know what I mean, that I didn't even know that you had a stroke and I never knew that. So it's just amazing. But yeah, the same thing with me. Like people always said like, oh, why do you talk white? I'm like, how do you talk white? This is just how I talk. Like I talk like a ghetto valley girl. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like I can't help it. This is who I am. I've always been. And then like, as far as the mental health thing, Biba, like it's so real. Like there's so many times that we go into sickle cell depression and people are just like, what is wrong?
Talk about it. Tell me, what is sickle cell depression? Tell me exactly what it is.
Sickle cell depression is like, everything could be, for me, I'll speak for me, right? So everything could be going right in the world, right? And everything, the world can be beautiful, sunny, whatever, whatever. My dog can be here around me, petting it, like my husband's loving me and all that stuff. And at some point, like, of the day, I just get into like this dark emotional place and it just comes out of nowhere. And I'm just like, what is this coming from? And then I have to think like everything I've been through over these 40 years, of course that's going to show up in some way and sneak up on me if I'm not paying attention. That's sickle cell depression. Everything we go through, the hospital stays, you know what I mean? Hearing doctors talk about us, like when we're not there, like, oh, you might not live to this age or that age. It gets on you and it weighs on you. So of course, that's going to sneak up on you at some point in the day when you're not realizing it. And it's just going to be like, why are you acting like that? Well, I'm acting like that because I've been through some stuff. And I'm sorry, I'll get out of it eventually and I'll come back to the world. But right now, I just have to deal with this and just let it be what it is.
But
so
thank you so much for sharing that.
I love that you said that. And thank you so much for being honest, because I think that, you know, this is about honesty. This is about living your truth. This is about, you know, calling out the incorrect judgments, right? You know, and I'm wondering, you know, as you were growing up and you were really discovering who you were, was there ever conversation in the medical care that you received? Was that ever part of your medical care? Any conversation around identity? I know the answer to this.
Well, no, but Ray, wait, that's not even, before we get there, everything they've shared so far, none of them has said that, okay, has I had my stroke or I was going through physical therapy, speech therapy? I was going to ask, has anyone ever come to, of course, I'm talking about your medical, you know, team, and offer, you know, any type of support for your mental health?
Right. And that's what I was getting at, like not the mental health part of your experience.
Exactly. So this is what so that's what we need to talk about. Like they are not doing that. But
I find that they do one of two things. They either go to the extreme and they call all your pain mental health. Right? Yeah. Oh, your chest hurts because that's anxiety. No, I got sickle cell and I could die from acute chest. You know, there's this idea that that's their out. And if they call it mental health, then they don't have to treat the sickle cell. But there's no such thing. Or they don't talk about it at all and everything sickle cell. right, then you can't be anything outside of sickle cell. So we have these extremes that we live in, and we all live in this gray area that really doesn't have healthy conversation.
Can I jump into the mental health real quick?
Yes. And then you have to address something, Andre.
Okay.
And you have to address something. How are we going to make sure that, we include, when we talk about comprehensive care, how do we include everything that is needed? Because you've lived with this disease for 34 years, as you said.
Yeah.
Are you working on that? Tell us, how can we do it?
Yeah, so as generally address this. So I make this point all the time. So, when like in trigger warning, this is going to be like a tough conversation that I'm about to have, but when we see like, these, really famous celebrities die by suicide, the first thing that people talk about is mental health.
Yes.
Now, let me say that is not a bad thing on its face. Mental health is a huge, I don't want to say problem, but it's a huge topic that should be discussed. But what I'm trying to couch is the fact that, coming to Ray's point, a lot of people don't understand that suicidal ideation does not always stem from depression or any type of mental health diagnosis. There is so much literature that talks about that there are chemical imbalances in people's brains, hormonal imbalances. And whether we want to believe it or not, from whatever religious or cultural background you come from, the way you were born and the way your biology is made up can predispose you to certain behaviors, and suicide is one of them. Yeah. I say that to say, I think there's a lot of times where we are not understanding that we treat mental health as something like we take our head off our shoulders at night and put it on the dresser and go to bed. Yeah. It's not something that's detached from my physical health. And I think that's really how you asked, Biba, how do we include mental health? First of all, and we're talking specifically for the sickle cell community, but to me, in order to do that, there has to be a monumental shift of how healthcare is provided, not just for us, but for everyone. Mental health should not be a separate separate part of healthcare. Like when we think of healthcare, no one instinctively thinks of mental health. Like you go to your doctor, then you call your therapist.
Screen you for a stroke because you can have complications in your head, but they don't. Right. They don't think.
But then even when they screen you, to me the level of support and resources are not there. And so my passion and one of my points of advocacy is, again, not to get too political, but I really believe that there should be a more universal way that we can take care of people's healthcare. Now, I know you live in Canada, Biba, so it's different.
Isn't that what holistic health is about?
Different, but not better. Don't say
that. What holistic health is supposed to be? That's what wraparound care is supposed to be. We use these terms that are just pretty words, but have no meaning behind them because they're not really truly applying what that word is meant to do, or what it just looks good on paper, right?
And your
because holistic health is
your physical. If like what Tristan was saying, now I can tell you, thinking about it now, when I can remember like memories of me being in the hospital, like in a crisis at like 7 by myself because my mama had to work, and if she didn't work, she'd get fired and we wouldn't have a place to live. So it's not like she didn't want to be with me, but she couldn't be with me because she needed to earn some money so we could have a roof over our head. Right. And I would be there by myself in the middle of the night, like just staring at the sky, like, am I going to make it out alive? Like, those are things like, I didn't know to call it mental health issues, but now I'm like, oh my God.
It takes its toll on you. Absolutely.
And it comes, and as Tristan said, it comes at the most random times. And my point is, as for all chronic illnesses or genetic illnesses, we experience so much trauma on just to be able to survive that there cannot be a separation between mental and physical health.
That's
if
right.
If you are stressed and full of anxiety, that's probably going to give you, that's probably going to like spur you into a crisis.
Yeah.
If you are having other like bipolarism or any other type of diagnoses, that's probably going to like affect your bodily health. So we really have to figure out a way to implement both. And it has to go beyond the screening that you lie on and check off at the doctor. 2 questions, do you feel down today? And then give them the clipboard back. But I feel like there should, as you said, wraparound care is not wraparound care, but that goes into a whole nother rant that I have about the American healthcare system that I know we don't have time for. So I'm gonna be quiet now.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. This is what I think. Sickle cell, of course, is a genetic condition, so it's a chronic one. You're going to live with it for the rest of your life. And when we look at it in the course of your life, when you have sickle cell, you're going to need so many different specialists, right, and to care for you that currently a hematologist, oncologist is not fit to know, well, not equipped, I would say, to deal with everything that you go through the course of your life. So maybe we have to start as a community to advocate for something more than what we have right now. Mm-hmm. I believe, and I'm sure that you will agree with me that palliative care must be the best solution for us. But when you say palliative care, people are scared. Am I gonna die? Am I dying? No. Palliative care should start with diagnosis, because this is when you get the psychologist, you get the pain management team, you get the hematologist, oncologist, whatever complications you have there.
Multidisciplinary team
in
the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And then, like now, hospice care, end of life care is different, because then they stop the treatment and just makes you comfortable, right? So that's what we have to advocate for, because as I look at it sometimes, I'm like, I see my son struggling to have access to different services at different times, Today he's tired. Tomorrow it's a migraine that he couldn't go to work. And then it's the stomach pain. And then it's like the blood. And then it's something. I'm like, well, you should be able to have all this team talking to each other, because the problem is you have to work more and put extra hours to get all these people together to work for you. And that takes so much time in your life.
And not only that, but it is Men's Health Month. And let's be honest, men access care differently. Right?
Yes.
And so it doesn't take much for them to say, you know what, bump this. I don't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
I got other things to do, worry about. Tristan, what you gonna say?
So a couple of things that I need to say real quick. So I remembered, you guys just jogged my memory. I had psychiatric care after my stroke, but it was during my pediatrics. You know what I mean? It was only during pediatrics. I seen 2 psychiatrists, one when I was like 10, until like I was like 12, and then the other when I was like 15 and till I was like 16. And it was the same guy. And he was like, yeah, I diagnosed you like this, blah, 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 back then. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And he's like, I told you, you think on the, the left side of your brain because you had a stroke in the right side of the brain. I'm like, all right. He's like, you're more creative. But it was in my pediatric care that I only got that. So yes, we do need that more in adult care. Now, the other thing is, as far as you were saying about the men's care, and this speaks to something that I understand better now, because my dad, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I lost my dad to COVID back in November of 2021, right? Before COVID, like my dad was the pillar of health. Like this man never went to the doctor. He drank smoothies. He didn't drink soda. Like he drank water. He was constantly giving me like different tips and tricks to like deal with my sickle cell and all that stuff. And so the fact that like I watched him go from being up and strong and big and muscular one day, and then to see him strapped to like a hospital bed with a, intubated, it just like really struck me, because I'm like, this man was healthy. Like COVID rocked him so hard that it took him to his grave. And I'm just like, this is the thing that I tell men all the time, like, no matter what happens, no matter how healthy you think you are, as a man, you need to make sure that you are getting checked out, at least, if not 6 months, at least like yearly. Like get your exams, get everything, because I've watched a healthy man
Yes.
go down in 7 days and go to his grave because, you know what I mean? It just hit him so hard. And like, he didn't have any of the knowledge of like the issues that were going on with him from the jump. You know what I mean? So
you're right. I'm a boy mom, and it's one of the things that I worry about the most. I see the hesitance, you know, in the way that he seeks care. Now he's 27, but I see this hesitance that says, it's not really bad enough for me to go. My son had COVID 3 times. The third time I had to, I was in his face like this. You are going to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Because in his mind, he's like, no, I don't want to deal with them. I'm gonna be okay. You got this, Mom. You can help me. I'm like, I know. We don't understand all there is to know. I need you to force them to care for you. And I'm right there to advocate for you. And it really goes back to that advocacy piece. As men, being able to self-advocate is not a weakness. It doesn't mean that, you know, you are begging anybody for anything. It doesn't speak against who you are as that man. But what it does say is your life matters.
right.
And you will make sure the people around you know and acknowledge that your life matters.
And especially Black men, like Black men deserve to get old. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is the thing, like Black men deserve to grow old. And
that's a whole hashtag.
I'm telling you.
We have a Twitter. We have a Twitter.
Tristan, I want to just tell you so many similarities. I know we're probably wrapping up soon, but now my father, he passed away way before COVID was a thing, but my father died at 47. Ooh. And his father died at 69. And my grandmother's father died, I think, at 49 or 50. I have to go back and look. So there's a few men on both sides of my family that died prematurely. So I can tell you from experience that having sickle cell to me, now Ray's son to me is a little different, but to me, I tell people I can afford to have that pride about my health, because if I do, I am going to, like, if I say, I almost feel like I've evolved into like a miniature hypochondriac, because anytime something don't feel right, okay, I'm going to the emergency room, like, because, or I'm going to the urgent care, because I'm not about to take that shit. Now, I don't care what nobody else do. And my dad's situation was a little different, but he also didn't, like, let's try to do it at home. No, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a social worker. I'm gonna let them tell me what to do. But I also wanted to, I know we're wrapping up, but I also wanted to go back.
We're not wrapping up.
No, don't worry.
Okay, I could talk. But I wanted to talk about something that we kind of veered from earlier, but I think it's important, how we talked about like the mental health as it relates to our sickle cell. Yeah. But then, like, I think you were going somewhere, Biba. I may be reading something into it, but I think it's worth mentioning the fact that, again, having an intersectional identity with sickle cell, or again, any other rare chronic disease, I don't think that is at the forefront of providers' minds. So I'll say this. There are different prophylactic medications that are recommended for people who are of the LGBTQ plus communities to mitigate the risk from different sexually transmitted diseases, some, bacterial infections, whatever it may be, right? There's something very common called PrEP. And I wanted to be on PrEP because I wanted to be the safest person possible. Again, I have sickle cell, so I know I can be more predisposed to catching something that I don't need to be catching. So I went, my current, I won't name them, but my current clinic has a primary care provider in the sickle cell clinic. So, I made an appointment with her, and I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. And I walked in, and I was at the appointment. I said, I would like to see how I could get started on PrEP. And she looked at me and said, PrEP for what? PrEP. You want to prep for surgery? Like, she was like, I was actually blown away. She did not know what, she said to me that I don't know what PrEP is. And I was like, okay, thank you. Have a great day. And I walked out. Right. They give great sickle cell care. But there's a void when it comes to the intersectional identity that I have.
Yeah.
So I have to go outside of my clinic that is supposed to be a wraparound clinic. They have a psychologist, they have a social worker, they have a primary care physician, they have a radiologist, they have all of this in-house, but I wanted to get something to take care of my sexual health, and they didn't know. And that is the thing for me. And I was telling Ray before we got on, and I think that's really where I'm going into as a doctoral student in my dissertation, is there's no guidance. And so one of my friends who is a queer health expert, he works at a local LGBTQ health clinic, was like, well, sickle cell patients usually have, need to watch out for their kidneys. So you don't need to take this version of PrEP. You should take this version of PrEP because it's not as harsh on your kidney. My sickle cell doctor didn't know that.
Wow.
So my friend, who is a LGBTQ health doctor, who knew something small as sickle cell patients have predisposition to kidney issues, told me what to ask. So I went to another doctor who provided PrEP, and that's, we could do that, that's fine. But when she prescribed it to me, she said there was no research, there was no literature that I could look on. So I'm literally using you, this is word of mouth information. So that is, I wanted to mention that because I think that is a problem. That is something that we need to find a way to address, because again, everyone isn't heterosexual. I mean, even, let's be honest, because we frame certain sexual diseases as something that only gay people get, heterosexual people get sexual transmitted diseases, they just don't talk about it. But you see what I'm saying? You're denying, again, part of my humanity and part of my right to be safe, because either there is a willful ignorance or in a way you can't blame them because they're trying to keep me alive. But at the same time, everybody doesn't identify the same, and we still need those resources to keep us safe, whole, and healthy.
Right. And I will say real quick, in my care team, I have my hematologist, and then my primary care doctor is actually a gay man. So the fact that I have a gay man as my primary care doctor makes all the difference. You know what I mean? He lets me know everything, every single thing that I need to know as a gay man, you know what I mean, about my health, about the different medicines and blah, 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 blah. So it makes a difference. So if you can get, like you said, you have your friend that works in the LGBTQ doctor or whatever, stay with him, because they know so much and can lead you in the right directions when it comes to all that stuff.
So I'm going to expand that a little bit, because what that means is, particularly, in light of that intersectionality that we all carry, it's important to find the providers who are right for you.
Yes.
So I'm going to bring it back to men's health. As men, it's easy to walk away from the healthcare system because of the experiences, but I urge and I challenge men and women, of course, but we talk about men right now. Yeah. I urge and challenge you to find the persons that are right for you. Maybe it's just that the interactions you've had, they weren't the right ones for you. It don't damn the system, just damn that person. but it's so important, no matter what. We're gonna have to bleep that out. But it's so important because you do more harm to yourself by extracting yourself from your own care. And we have to change the narrative that we don't live till we are old. We have to change the narrative that we don't care about our health. We have to change the narrative that we don't participate in clinical trials, because none of that is true. The problem is the systems in which we have to do it, not that the things that we need to do. That's the issue. So I'm all for confronting these issues, and I'm all for finding the people who are those champions on the inside of healthcare and providing them an elevated voice so other people can see that they do exist. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's profound. Both of you have found a connection in someone in the healthcare system that you felt could see you for who you were. And that's critically important. Biba.
Yeah, but here is the thing. They had to do it for themselves.
Yes.
They had to do it for themselves. Nobody else thought about doing it for them. And even when Andre went to seek, the care that he knew he needed, they couldn't provide it for him. So here is what we learned, that one of the big takeaways for me is that, we come to this health equity and justice, whichever it is that we are seeking, with different life experiences and level of understanding. So this is why, your openness and authenticity is important, and it matters in this community, specifically for us to keep sharing, to raise our voices so that we educate our community, we educate ourselves. And then I'm sure somebody listening to this who is, maybe younger, and then maybe is not talking about it publicly, can say, oh my God, I never knew I had to do all this, to take care of myself on top of, managing my sickle cell.
Yeah.
I had to take, those other things. So thank you so much for this. It's amazing. I didn't know. So today I had an aha moment. And the fact that you were all, very knowledgeable, and you had to do it and then find the best care and create the system for you. Ray, we need to have another webinar with them because we need to talk about
absolutely.
it.
Okay, but I do, but I want to really, before we let everybody go, I really want to talk about how do you feel that your intersectional identity impacted family relationships, support system? Because what I get concerned about is that for those who are still in their awakening, who are struggling with coming out and living their truth, that so often the lack of support, right? It's no different than sickle cell when nobody wants to talk about it. They don't want to tell their employer. They don't want to tell their child's teachers. There's this fear that they will be mistreated, undertreated, not treated at all if they come out with that truth. What would you all say to individuals who do want to come out, but they're struggling because they need that support system? What does that look like?
What I would say to that person is that in the let me put it like this. So I've run the gamut, right? Because growing up, my dad's side of the family, I was at my uncle's funeral and I showed up looking like this, right? And one of my cousins that I didn't really know from the South, he looked at me and he was like, oh, wait, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm, Fred's son. He was like, and you're our family? We don't have people like you in our family. And my cousin was standing there. She was like, hold up. Like, what are you talking about? But that right there let me know, like, yes, I am in your family and you do have people in your family, because this is a whole nother subject, but it goes deep and I'm not going to go there because.
Yeah, we all do.
But, and then my grandmother, I told you, that took me to church. We were sitting in church when I was like 19 and I just came out or whatever. And she cried and was like, Tristan, I just want you to be saved. I don't want you to go to hell. And I'm like, Grammy, I'm not going to hell. Like, I'm good. Me and God, we're good. Like, I wouldn't have got this far if God wasn't with me. What are you talking about? So I say all that to say to the person that is just coming into their awakening, trust and believe there will be trials and tribulations. There will be people who you'll find that aren't rocking with you, but that's okay, because those people you leave in the rear view. You don't look back. You go forward and you find your own family, your own community, and your own support. In the LGBTQ community, we believe so much and we always find our chosen family, and they're out there to support and love and help us. And sometimes we're blessed to have some of our family actually come along for that ride. But if they don't, just know that there's still a chosen family out there for you that will love and embrace you. So that's what
family doesn't have to be blood.
Exactly.
So I gotta go somewhere here, okay? And it's gonna be also a time for you to educate me. I want to share something. So here is the thing for me that I think and I believe it's for every single Black person. Our culture, our value are rooted into community, into families. It's important for us, right? As Black people. So as a mom, one of the worries that I have every time, I'm like, how does it feel? Already society is gonna, reject you or discriminate you. So you should be able to rely on your family, right? So what I want to say is that because I come from both worlds and I've been to Africa and here, and I see how it's treated differently, the way the Western world is now more open and supportive, and we understand it, I think we have to also realize that some older people are not at that level. So we have to give them time. They will come around. I'm sure they will, but maybe it might take more time, and we don't have that time.
I would even say that for some countries, right?
Yes, and I'm not telling you to wait for them. Live your life, be who you are, but keep that in mind that it's because we live in so many different worlds, and how do we continue to change things by, is it education that's going to be the thing? Is it, I don't know what it is it more advocacy? But I just want to say that. I don't know if you understand what I mean here.
No, like what I will say is grace. I give everybody grace. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Be who they are, to live however they live. I understand that my lifestyle and the way I live might not be what the norm was back then, and it might not have been the thing back then in that day, but in this day, you can't tell me how I can live, and you're not going to tell me how I can live, because you don't live my life. I live my life. You know what I mean? I will give you the grace to exist and have your views, and I will live and let live. I believe that. That's my mantra. But at the same time, like, I'm still going to do me. And I'm sorry, I have so much to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to respond to like Ray's question that you answered, and then like family and friends and support and all that, and what do you say? So I love how there's so many parallels between Tristan and I. So again, I was raised in church, and so I lived in North Carolina for 16 years, but I was born in Michigan. So the majority of my family still lives in Michigan. I always usually go back once or twice a year to visit. So I couldn't have been no more than like 12, I think. And I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I was in Kalamazoo visiting my grandmother. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but this is after learning the stories from my grandmother and my family members. But I remember I used to, every time I went to go to Kalamazoo, I went to both of my grandmother's churches. I went to my mom's mom and my dad's mom. I went to church with both of them on Sunday morning. I went to one at the 8 o'clock service and one to the 11 o'clock service. And if they had a evening service, they had to fight over who was going to get the grandchild. Anyway, so I remember we were at my grandmother's church, and she's leaving angry, like something happens. And I remember she stay out here on like the sidewalk, and she's like, talking spiritedly in the foyer area. And she left kind of mad, really didn't understand what was going on. And then later on, she just stopped going to church. Now, for that grandmother, that was unusual, because my grandmother was on the usher board, like she was very involved in church, and she just stopped and hasn't been back since. What I learned was, and again, like I said, from the time I can remember, people called me the S word that ends with Y, the F word that ends with T. I'm giving you the words without saying them. Mm-hmm. This was before, I knew even what those were, but at young ages, people, you got sugar in your tank, all of these derogatory sayings, and so apparently one of the members of the church my grandma went to, made a comment about her, gay grandson, and that's not the word he used. And she was very upset about it, and, talked to the pastor, blah, blah, blah. And it was I think a deacon talking about, he needs a man in his life, and somebody need to toughen him up. And this is what gets me about when people say stuff like this. My father was always in my life, right? And my father, thank God, even though he died when I was 22, 23, and that was before I came out, but he knew I was different. He may not have known what it was, but he didn't hold me to those stringent and I call it a performance of masculinity. Mm-hmm. He allowed me to show up as I showed up. I was never in sports. He didn't give a crap that I cared about sports. Mm-hmm. I liked fashion. He took me to go buy Vogue magazine. He supported me for being his son. So I appreciated that. But so my grandmother, my mother's mother, we've never had a conversation about my orientation, but she, in that moment, still stood up for me in whatever ways. There's a lot of things she said to that man that I cannot repeat on this, because it's recorded. But you know, she advocated for me in that sense. And then I just wanted to say very quickly that I'm the only one in my family that I know who's openly anything else than straight, right? And so I think that also kind of what Tristan said, you kind of feel alienated. And I wanted to say earlier, but I could say it now, that in the sickle cell community, I've had the DMs, I've had people walk up to me at the Warriors Convention and say, I saw you with that other guy and he's gay. We saw y'all go up on the elevator together. What were y'all doing? Like, again, the over-sexualization. So just because I'm feminine or because I'm not masculine, this was before I came out. So even now that I'm out and I'm bisexual, that means every man that I'm seen near, I have to have sex with them. It does not make sense. So, you know, I've had those things in the sickle cell community. So I'm like, well, I don't feel like I belong here. The Black folk, you know, they say I'm going to hell because Jesus told them I'm going to hell. So then in church, same thing. Like, it was rarely a place where I felt like I was accepted. And I'll say this is even sad. Sometimes I don't feel like I belong even in the queer community because I don't show up in certain ways. Like, you know.
Is it because you're Black that you don't belong in the community?
Well, even in the Black queer community, because, you know, there's a lot of beauty standards that heterosexual people have that have translated into the homosexual community. So if you don't look like Tyson Beckford, don't nobody want to talk to you. Or if you know, ain't into, you know, gym culture or, you know, whatever culture, this is a longer discussion, but there's rarely a time where I feel like I'm accepted in one place. So I say that to say, I said all of that to say, I never really felt like I had that support system, whether it was with sickle cell, because I'm also the only person in both sides of my family that I know that has sickle cell disease, or with my identity. So it really was me being fed up of how people were not just treating me, but treating the communities that I claim to be a part of. And I felt the onus on me to speak out. So that is being said, that sometimes, and Tristan kind of alluded to this, you may not have that. You may not have the support. You may not have the family. I can't, you know, my parents know, and my sister knows, and, you know, they don't mistreat me, but like, you may not have that, oh my God, we're going to go to the Pride Festival with you. You know, they may still love you, but they probably, you know, it goes to a certain extent. So I said all of that to say, sometimes it really has to, and it's unfortunate, but it lays on you. And really that responsibility is your decision to make, even with sickle cell. And I know Biba may be able to talk about this way more than I can, but I know so many of my West African colleagues that have sickle cell who believe it's something you should never talk about. You know, it's stigmatized and it's a curse. And so all of these things have played in my mind. Why am I so audible and out loud about it? Is because, to me, in my personal opinion, if I don't do it, who will? If I don't say it, who will? And I've always felt that inclination that I have to be the one to do it. If I don't, to me, that silence equates violence.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You are so right.
And lastly, the N-word, again, this is like Biba said, part 2, but there is such a thing as self-hatred and inward homophobia. And and again, when Ray met me, like, there were so many things that even now that I'm unlearning, that I'm like, oh, Andre, that's homophobic, or Andre, the way that we construct femininity, first of all, in the heteronormative society, women are devalued. So anything that is feminine is devalued, right? Because we don't value women's life. We don't pay them equally. We think that we could do anything sexually to them when we want, how we want. So of course, femininity in a man is going to be even more, oh, that's a red flag, because you're not showing up. You're not the aggressive, barbaric person that we expect you to be, because you're supposed to be dominant. And there's something that doesn't compute to people when they see someone who identifies with masculine identity, because I identify as, you see it on the screen, he, him, his. Those are masculine identities, but I don't have the traditional masculine presentation. And I think, again, this is beyond that scope, but masculinity and femininity are social constructs, just like race is a social construct. There are boxes that we as humans have created, and for people to deviate from them confuses a lot of people. And if you don't show up with the muscles and the, you know, you burp and you eat steak and potatoes and have a beer belly and you have a recliner, if you're not Al Bundy, then you're not a man. You know, and that we have to destroy that type of thinking. And when we are destroying that type of thinking, what are people saying? We're destroying the Black man and we're emasculating him, because there's only one way that people believe that we should be able to show up. And if it's not the traditional masculine way, then it's not good. And that is what pushes me to talk about it, because identity is self-identity. If I tell you I'm a unicorn, then that's what the heck I said I am. If I say I'm a bottle of Aveeno lotion, then Ray, you need to call me a bottle of Aveeno lotion. My identity is controlled by who I say I am. Yeah. And people don't respect
and
that.
I may not know that. I may have to learn that. I may make mistakes. Yeah. I might call you Suave lotion. I don't know. I might, you know, just on accident, then, you know, correct me. And we have to be able to accept that correction. It's not personal, because that's where the violence against communities come in, is when people have a hard time accepting someone else's view for themselves, for themselves. I didn't ask you to become what I am. I just asked you to accept who I am. And I want to protect. I want to make sure that I create a safe space around myself, around our organization, that says you are safe to be who you are, in all of who you are. And that is because I want you to be healthy. So if I want you to be healthy for your sickle cell, I want you to be healthy in your mind. I want you to be healthy spiritually. I want you to be healthy sexually. That means holistically, I want you to be healthy. You know, and we have to create those spaces so that those who don't live in those spaces, those who may not reside in countries where they have those safe spaces, know and understand that a better day is coming, that there are people who are creating those safe spaces for them. That's important to me.
Exactly.
Yes. And you said it
so well. Real quick, like, I also, if people see me like this, I said I am, you know, androgynous, but I am a man. You know what I mean? Like, androgynous is just how I can go from, you know, looking like masculine to feminine very easily. That's just what my look is. But I am he, him, his. I always tell people, I have never, when people misgender me, that sends me over the edge. I'm like, I'm a guy, I'm a man. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I am. Please stop. Just because I look like this, like, I'm a man. I've always been a man. I'm always going to be a man. And that's just what it is. So
yeah,
I just put it out there.
And we have to be okay with if we make that mistake. Like we talked about that, Andre. We are, listen, when they went from Negro to colored to Black, back to people of, I know you're confused. We confused a little too. We trying to get it right too. But we
mulatto, Octoroon.
Yes, I mean we
Negroid. Yeah.
We in the society, humanity has this tendency to want to put people in the box. Andre, right before you said it, I had just wrote down the box. Because we have this idea that everyone should fit neatly in these boxes. And that's what we have to destroy. The construct is the box. That's the construct. And when we get out of that, then we can begin to accept people for who they are holistically, not pieces of them, not parts of them, you know. And that's where I see this challenge in our society globally. Our global society, and some places are even more dangerous than others. And so I am so grateful for this conversation. That's right. Somebody in the chat said we got to color outside the lines, because you know, you got your hand slapped in kindergarten. You got to trace it and make sure you don't cross over. We have to get away from that. That's not safe.
Yeah.
That's And it does not allow us to be the fullness of who we were created to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I am grateful. Go ahead.
Ray, stop. Today somebody else attended this webinar with us. The person was constantly behind Tristan, your dog. Can you introduce that?
Commodore, come here.
Yeah. Oh,
Get mine out of my office because
He was ready to come on camera.
He sure was.
Yeah, he was
like, it's my turn.
Every time my Zoom camera comes on, he's like, "Oh, this is what we've done." Okay.
Yeah.
So can I just say thank you guys so much for this conversation. Thank you on behalf of the LGBTQ SCD community. There are so many of us. I definitely want to, just acknowledge my other LGBTQ SCD warriors, because I know who they are. I know they would love to have been a part of this conversation. And I just want you to know, Andre, that we exist. You know what I mean? We're trying to bridge that right now. So I think with us having this platform that Ray and Biba provided is going to bring us so much closer to getting that bridge like I was talking about. And, I just think we need to continue these conversations and definitely part 2. And also include some of the other ones and, hear what they have to say.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I give you my word that we will have a follow-up to this. And maybe even during Sickle Cell Awareness Month, because I want people to be aware.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I am even thinking about a webinar that will be for education, of those in the community to know exactly what they need to do, what you've done for yourself, to care for yourself. We have to share it more so that people can hear.
And get those medical experts on that
you want to come, and share with us. Maybe we should get your primary care physician to come next time, Tristan, to talk.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I will invite him and let's have a talk.
That's right.
It's Sickle Cell 101, but we're gonna tell them more than that.
This show was a perfect example of why we named this series More Than Our Sickle Cell.
Yes.
This is the reason we did it. We want people to understand we are more than just one piece. We are more than just one part. We are a kaleidoscope of many attributes of ourselves. And we all show up and we make a beautiful world. We make a beautiful world. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Andre, anything that you want to say before we wrap up?
I think I've talked so much tonight. I wrote so many notes, but I just want to say to those, and we always know that those who probably ain't down with it ain't even going to tune in to listen. But if they are listening, if they just so happen to stumble upon this, that pride, is about recognizing our humanity. And Ray said it before, I am not here to convert you into any type of lifestyle. And I think that's what we get wrong. A lot of people think that we're trying to convert them to be something that they're not. I just want you to treat me as a human being like I should be treated. And so this is why it is important, going back to that comment, it is important to recognize that people with sickle cell are different. Far too long we have, which is not a bad thing, far too long we've focused our efforts on trying to cure the disease, focus our efforts on trying to treat it appropriately, come up with new drugs. These are great things, but the social aspect is where it's lacking. And I really just wanted to leave that with, we have to do better with allowing people to show up authentically and then having resources for them to feel comfortable in the way that they show up. So I'm glad to have been a part of this. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this before, and hopefully not the last.
Thank you. Thank you. So to all of you who have participated in this meeting tonight, we want to continue to be bold, to advance our necessary path, to advance health equity and social justice. So again, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Tristan, Andre. Thank you.
Bless you, Andre.
Yeah, bless. And we definitely would like to keep this conversation going, though. Ray, we are not stopping here. We will continue, right? Everyone.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for those who joined us. And if you have any questions to follow up, you can reach out to either Biba Tinga or myself. We'll put the our emails in the chat. Devo and Andre, if you are open to leaving your email as well in the chat, we want to make sure that we create communication lines. That's part of that safe space, is knowing that people have someone that they can reach out to and talk to. So that's important. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, or you've come across this video on some other platform, we invite you to check us out. We invite you to learn more about sickle cell disease, the organizations that we represent, but more importantly, the community that we represent, because we are more than our sickle cell disease. We are more than just being Black. We are more than just being straight, heterosexual, or homosexual, or any part of LGBTQ. And guess what? We are all going to make mistakes along the way, but we're teachable. And that's all that we ask. Be teachable, be open, learn about somebody other than yourself. All right. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a good night.